I'm going to hit you with a question from Mike Sufert. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, over on X, Twitter, whatever people are calling it these days. He says, as it stands now, what would you rank the Cavs bench? And he's really literally asking how we would rank the bench among the 30 teams. I'll let you take the first swing at this, if you don't mind.
I remember Mike. I see him on Twitter sometimes. What's up, Mike? Ranking the bench amongst the entire league. That is interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people talked about the depth in the playoffs, right? That was one of the weaker points for the Cavs. When we were healthy, it felt like, especially in the middle of the season, people were speaking highly of the bench. Talked about being 9, 10 men deep. I think the lack of free agency moves is oddly kind of foreshadowing how the Cavs feel about their bench. It seems in general, the organization's higher on the roster than the fans and people outside. So, but I mean, you finish, despite injuries, top 8 in the league. You're missing a starter to 2 for a lot of that portion. I think your floor for the bench is at least middle of the league. And I think you can go as far as up into maybe punching near the top 10, but probably can't say that now, especially months away from the season beginning and everything. So I think it's fair. At least the Cavs probably feel this, and I think people who aren't down on the Cavs roster so much, I think the bench could play up to a top 10 to 15 bench in the NBA. I think it's somewhere in that range. Yeah.
I think it's totally dependent upon who we're factoring into that bench, right? Because there's still a looming decision to be made in regards to Isaac Okoro. We don't really know what is going on with that situation. It continues to look like he's probably going to return on either the qualifying offer, which honestly I hope not, because we don't want to risk him walking away for nothing. We don't want to risk losing an asset for nothing, or a multi-year extension. I don't necessarily feel like the sign and trade is going to happen. I just don't see it happening. I know there's a lot of talk out there about a potential DFS or, Cam Johnson type move out there with a Brooklyn, but more and more I'm starting to feel like Isaac Okoro is going to be a Cleveland Cavalier come the 2024-25 season, at least at the start. Without even factoring in Okoro, though, I mean, the bench is still, it's a little iffy to me. Beyond Karis LeVert, presumably Craig Porter Jr., who I'm sure the Cavaliers want to give a bigger role this year. Dean Wade, George Niang, who we're hoping has a bounce back season under Kenny Atkinson. There just isn't too many proven pieces. I mean, as we speak, the Cavaliers only roster 12 players right now. That is Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, LeVert, Strus, Mobley, Niang, Wade, Tyson, who I think is going to be a year 1 contributor. So maybe he picks up some of the pieces here. Ty Jerome, who so many Cavaliers fans seem to have forgotten about, who I think will actually play a role this year at some capacity. Sam Merrill, who is a sharpshooter of the highest chord, but there's a common thing. And Craig Porter Jr. There's a common theme here.
Dean Wade as well.
Yes, Dean Wade. There's a common theme that is running rampant with a lot of these players, though, and that is the size. Like the positional versatility is just not there. There are a lot of overlap in these players, and so I just don't know how the minutes are going to be distributed among this bench. And viewing that and seeing who we have available to us on this roster right now, I can't help but feel that I'm not super high on the bench just yet. I think I might be able to get there, but not having a true backup big outside of, I guess, Dean Wade, if you're gonna have him playing some minutes at backup 5 in emergency situations, because we all know that Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen are gonna take turns manning the backup center role at times in various lineups. But not having that true backup big, not having a little bit more size out of that wing group, I'm still kind of in the same place that I am with this group. So I wouldn't necessarily rank them as a, bottom 10 bench, but I don't know if I can go as high as top 10 is their ceiling. I'm not there yet. They got to iron out a few details. I need to see at least one move be made, and hopefully that one move is a backup big. That is the one thing that I'm waiting on right now.
Yeah, so it sounds like I'm thinking about this in the 10 to 15. You're thinking about this in 15 to 20. It makes sense. I think, at least to give you some confidence, 2 years ago, we entered this Donovan core with Robin Lopez. This past year, we do with Tristan Thompson. I think there's good reason to believe Kobe Altman will bring in some sort of size at that position. I think in general, these players that we see on this bench that maybe we're not as high on, I think if you just think about it in terms of like what their market value could be, it's probably safe to assume these guys will play better than they did closing out the season. That's a huge belief in Kenny Atkinson, obviously, but I think George Niang can be better. I think Harris
Oh,
Levert
sure.
could be a lot better, actually. Ty Jerome, like you said, basically an afterthought. I mean, the guy was he joined the Cavs for actually a prominent role to play for like a bigger contract as a backup point guard somewhere else, and he just lost the opportunity. But the same opportunity he has this year, so I wouldn't. You also have Craig and Jalen Tyson who can also make off the bench. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little bit higher on the bench. I agree with the need for size. I think it is probably a safer bet that this is not the roster that enters the playoffs. I think the Cavs are in a situation right now, one of 3 teams that haven't made a move. Obviously, trying to figure out the Okoro situation, which changes a lot of stuff with the hard cap. The good thing that I will say about the Cavs, even though we haven't solved some of the issues we need to solve right now, it's very true. We also haven't created new issues just yet. That's one benefit I see. We haven't taken on future money. We haven't like the big thing that we've done, like you started talking about Kenny Atkinson, you started talking about the extensions to Mobley and Mitchell and now Allen, right? Those moves are moves that are not just about this season. Those moves are 2025, 2026, 27 moves, right? And by the time you get to 2027, this is a second apron team. So when it comes to like, looking at the Okoro situation or looking at a backup big or looking at a Niang replacement or whatever have you, the Cavs are kind of trying to build leverage against the market a little bit here. You don't want to overpay on anybody. You don't want to take future money. You want to bring guys in who need you more, who may need you as much as you need them, so much as trying to go out and overpay, which they may have done last year a little bit with guys like Niang and such. So, yeah, I'm hoping that the patience pays off. I'm pretty confident. You extend Mitchell for at least 2 years, right? He's here to contend. So you're here to give him a team that contends. So I believe the moves will come. I think we're going to be more of a spicier trade deadline team than any other.
I would hope so, just because I'm not truly inspired by the bench right now, but they do have the potential to surprise me. I'll put it that way
That
because
makes
I
sense.
really do. I really do feel like Jalen Tyson is going to make a pretty big impact in year one. I do think we're going to see a bounce back season from George Niang, who, I mean, prior to signing on with Cleveland, shot 40% or better in 5 straight seasons. It is very, very, I think it is very, very reasonable to expect that any Kenny Atkinson offense with so much motion and a hell of a lot more opportunity for creation, that players like George Niang, Max Strus, Sam Merrill, Evan Mobley, you really could just list off the entire roster. I think everybody is going to benefit from having an offensive mind like Kenny Atkinson in town. But I do think it's reasonable to expect some of these guys to have bounce back seasons. The one thing that we have seen time and time again with this roster, though, is that we have issues with health, though. And I think that's another caveat here. That's another thing that kind of worries me a little bit in terms of depth. Dean Wade, we know that when he is healthy, when he is confident, he can be as impactful as ever, with especially on the defensive end of the floor. And we know that he actually had the 3-ball drop in at specific points last year, and he shot a career best. But if you're not healthy, it's not really it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't make a difference. So we have to get that depth. And hopefully, as you said, maybe they'll be active at the deadline.